Good afternoon and welcome to another TUG Connects 365 webinar. I'm Gloria Nelson, your host with TUG, and as you settle in and get ready for the start of today's webinar, let me give a brief introduction for TUG, the usergroup.org for both our current members and those of you who represent organizations that have not yet joined our online community for Infor distribution software users. We've all heard the phrase knowledge is power, and I can say with confidence that after today's presentation, you'll be waking up tomorrow with a little more of both. And today is but one of our many robust sessions. TUG webinars, online forums, and member events facilitate the timely exchange of ideas and information to help you work smarter and with more confidence. That's a powerful combination. If you're currently a member, it pays to get even more involved. And if you're not, please visit our website to discover why 2,300 heads are better than one to help you be the best at what you do. What I'd like to share before we get started is that intellectual property is shared today graciously by the folks at UnForm. So feel free to capture any screenshots that you would like, as well as to cut and paste any chat for further reference. And now, without any further ado, it is our pleasure to welcome Paul Boushell, Sales Executive UnForm, Brian Jones, VP Technology of NSA Computer Exchange, and Christy Mitchum is here also, and she's going to be commandeering the Q&A. Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you, so go ahead and take it away.
Got it. All right, thank you, Gloria. Today we're going to step through the tools that UnForm has that help you to automate various business processes. But before we jump into that, I'm just going to step through a couple of PowerPoint slides very quickly, just to kind of remind us of some of the other applications we've got. So we do have a complete suite of solutions to manage all your document management needs, from print management, which I'm sure most of you are probably using today, that takes the output either from your on-prem ERP, your cloud suite ERP, or any other business applications, and you can use that to create forms and reports that then can be delivered via email, fax to printers, of course, however they need to. And then we've got the document management solution, and that consists of a couple of different applications. So the first is the archive, which is where we store all the documents. So as documents get generated through print management, they're automatically archived so that they're available for retrieval as needed. Image Manager is the application we're going to focus on a fair amount today, and that's the application that takes documents, external documents, whether they're scanned or if they're already an electronic copy, and we bring those into the archive. And once they're in the archive, we can do a variety of things with them. We can push them into doc flows, which we're going to look at today, so that we can route invoices. And what we're going to look at today is expense invoices and how we can route those for approvals. You can also use the Image Manager and the archive to actually extract data from documents and push that data into your ERP to automate the data entry piece. So as we get through, Brian's going to step us through how we can use those tools to get inbound customer purchase orders entered into the ERP without anybody having to key them in. And we can also push documents in addition to archive. We can push the documents that come in, either via print or through Image Manager into other repositories, including IDM. So the version 10 of UnForm is what we're focused on now. That's the most recent version. It is completely, browser-based. So it's very easy to deploy, especially the Image Manager piece. You don't have to load an application on someone's workstation for them to be able to scan and import documents. And the whole focus is on automation. So it allows you to fully index documents and transfer those to the archive with, in a lot of cases, no human intervention at all. We can also put the documents into a doc flow. So if they need to be routed for approvals or for other reasons, you can route those documents as needed. And then we're going to see how we can format documents as an electronic transaction. So today, again, we're going to step through three primary functions, and that is the automated capture of documents and as they're coming into your business. So how do we get those documents into the document repository as quickly and easily as possible? Then we'll look at how we can route documents for approvals. And then we're going to look at how you can take an inbound customer purchase order and get the data from it and turn it into an electronic transaction for automated data entry. So I'm going to step out of here for a second and step over to UnForm. So this is the primary browser window. So these are all the different components of UnForm. And so what we're going to look at and talk about today is a little bit about archiving, image manager, of course, and doc flow. But before we jump into that, what I'm going to do is I've got a email queued up here, and it's got a batch of invoices. In this example, they're vendor invoices. Typically today we see these coming in via email. So I'm going to send those to an email address that UnForm monitors. And let me talk about that for just a second. So one of the concepts that we have in version 10 is concept of inbound sources. So inbound sources are simply, where documents are coming in. It could be an email box, or it could be a directory somewhere where you're dragging and dropping documents or scanning documents to it. So we can set up an email address to be monitored, and then as documents come into that email address, we can define what we want to have happen to them as they get processed. So what kind of documents are they, and what do I do with them? So the action defines what's going to happen with it. So that is a monitored inbound email source. And again, we can also have directories that we monitor. So as documents come into from a specific directory, again, determine what it is that I need to do with those documents and automatically process that job. So let me see if these are coming in. So we should be starting. Okay, so we're starting to see the documents come in to image manager. So as they're coming in, again, based on that monitored inbound source, we've defined what we want to do with those documents as they come in. In this example, we're simply going to capture the primary information off of these vendor invoices that we're going to use for indexing purposes. So, vendor name, number, invoice number, PO number, dates, those kinds of things that we're going to use in the archive to be able to look those documents up. So as they're processing, you'll see it's starting to come in. I'm getting check marks on these. The check marks indicate that as those documents processed, we were able to get all the data off of those that we've defined as required to be able to load it up into the archive. And I think we're almost there. And one of the things I wanted to point out too is if these are coming in, these are PDFs coming in, and in some cases, we've got a single PDF that's coming in with multiple invoices in it. You don't have to do any kind of pre-processing with those. So as those come in, we can read that single PDF, and then as the invoice number changes, we can come in and split that up into multiple documents. So you don't have to do any pre-processing for all that. So again, these have come in, and you'll see we've got check marks on these. These are all good. These are examples of some where we haven't defined where the data is we're trying to capture. It's a very easy process to adjust where these fields are based on a new vendor. We use what we call job definitions to do that. So as a new document comes in, I simply open one of the existing job definitions, and I can rename it for the new vendor, and then I simply adjust where my different fields are. So if I need to grab, excuse me, my invoice number, let me move this out of the way. I can simply adjust where that's coming from. So my new invoice number is coming from here. So again, as a new one comes in, I simply adjust it, save it as my new vendor, and I'm ready to move on. And then from here, these documents, again, can be pushed. They'll be pushed into the archive, but we also, I'm just going to grab a couple of them here and finish these up. We also have the ability to load these up, make sure I ran the right job on them. We have the ability to push these not only into the archive, but in this example, we've got these set up to actually push over into IDM as well. So when I hit go here, it'll take these documents, push them into the UnForm archive, and also push them over into IDM as well. So if we jump over here and hit recently modified, they should start coming in. And you can see they're loading up here. So we will also have pushed those into the UnForm archive as well. So if I come back over here, you have the ability to pull up the documents in UnForm archive as well. So you can either use the UnForm browser-based retrieval app to go to them, or we've also got Chrome web extensions you can use to launch from that, the UnForm archive as well. So in here, I'm launching from the order inquiry screen, and I'm able to get to that document straight from within my inquiry. So real easy to get to the documents you need and find what you're looking for. So Image Manager is, again, the tool that we use to bring those external documents in, whether they're scanned in or whether we're monitoring a mailbox or whether you're dragging and dropping them into a directory. They'll get processed and pushed into the archive. So I think, Gloria, at this point, I'd like to go ahead and do one of the first polling questions while we, excuse me, before we move on to the expense process. So right now, one of the question is, are you currently using any automation techniques to import transactions to minimize manual entry and increase accuracy? So are you doing any EDI? Do you have any other kind of process where you're importing data so that nobody's having to actually manually key that? The answers are no processes are automated, or you may have 1 or 2 processes automated. You may have 3 to 4, or if you've got more than 4, that's great. So if you just take a minute and run through that polling question there. Okay, so let's see. So it looks like about 38% of you have no processes automated at this point. About 50%, pretty good, that's a good number, has 1 or 2 processes automated. So I'm sure you're starting to see the value of being able to do those things. 8% have 4 or more, and then 4% of you have more than 4 or more processes automated. So that's good. It looks like at least everybody's thinking about it and moving some of those processes to a more automated fashion. What I want to step through now is our doc flow piece. So the example I'm going to give is going to I'm actually going to show 2 real quick. One is for expense type invoices, and typically you have 2 different routes for vendor invoices. You have expense, or overhead type invoices that typically, somebody needs to sign off on prior to paying for them. So, it could be, truck maintenance or purchases for office supplies or, computer equipment, those kinds of things. And then the other kind of flow is the the invoices that come in for inventory purchases, and those don't typically need to hit a doc flow unless they failed the three-way match. So as if an invoice comes in and for some reason the prices and the quantities just aren't lining up, that's typically when it hits a doc flow. You don't necessarily, you know, if the three-way match works, there's really no reason, you know, to send it to anybody for approval. It's all good to go. So the first one I'm going to step through real quick is going to show you, this is kind of a typical expense invoice process that we see, and this one's based, it's a pretty straightforward, simple one, simply based on the dollar value of an invoice. So as the dollar value hits different levels, it needs to go to different people to do the approval. And these, there's a variety of ways to bring documents into a doc flow. One is as they come in through Image Manager, they can be programmatically added to flows at that point. As they're printed, you can have them there added at print. Let me run these through, excuse me. So, and then you can actually manually add those to a flow as well. So I'll show you an example of that in just a second. So one of the things too I want to point out is what I'm doing now is I'm actually doing parts of the process manually just so that you can see how it works. Once you turn the full automation on, you would not have to go select this particular job to run it. It would know based on the inbound source what jobs to run and would go ahead and run. So these are ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and upload them, and they'll put them into the archive, and from there they're available for doc flow. So these are now. Let's make sure I'm in the pick my flow. And by the way, this can all work on you know, smartphones as well. So it's a responsive app, so it would size appropriately for your phone. And you'll see here these three documents came in, and again, based on their dollar value, they went to different people for approval. I'm logged in as an admin, so I see everybody's. But if I was logged on as the branch manager, I'd only see the documents that came in requiring my approval. So you can see as the dollar value goes up, at the next tier, it's going to go to the controller, and then the next tier, it's going to go to the CEO. And all this is configurable based on whatever your business processes are. And you know, we also see a lot of instances where you may have two folks that need to sign off on them as well. So again, it's all configurable based on whatever your particular business process is. So the documents are in here. You can add other documents to it if you need to. So if you had some notes or emails associated with it, you can add those to it. You can also put manual notes on here. We're going to log and track everything that happens to it as it goes through. And then the actions are where you come in and you do, you know, what you need to do. So, and again, these actions are all configurable based on whatever your particular process is. So I could go ahead in this one and say, I'm going to go ahead and approve it, save it, and you'll see it updated my status here. And then I'm going to hit go, and now what it's done is it approved it, and then it's going to alert the accounting department that particular invoice has been approved and it's ready to be set up for payment. Another way you can add these to a flow. This is a quick example here of a document that comes in that may have an invoice has come in and it failed the three-way match. You can come in here and assign those documents to a specific flow. In this case, I'm going to send it to the buyer that was responsible for that and hit go. And if I come back over here to my flows and I'm buyer one, I'm going to come in here, take a look at it, and you'll see it's getting everything loaded up. So I've sent the buyer the invoice along with the PO and the packing slip. So they have all the information they need to be able to review that transaction and resolve whatever the particular issue is. So again, doc flows are used to route documents based on whatever the particular process is, and it's all configurable based on your specific business rules. We log and track everything that happens to the documents as they come through the flows, so that you have a complete audit trail of the whole transaction in case you should have to go back through. So I think we're going to do one more quick polling question if we could, and then the question number 2 is, are you currently using an electronic document repository? And the answer is yes or no. So are you storing your documents, electronically, or are you still, putting them in filing cabinets and up in the mezzanine, once those filing cabinets get full? So we'll give that just a minute to finish up. Then I think, just if you are currently, still manually managing your files, I think some of the examples we looked at today are perfect examples of how much easier it is to manage them electronically, and how quickly an ROI can be realized. So especially with those, the purchase orders, invoices, and packing slips, if you think about that kind of a transaction and how many times those documents get handled manually, just being able to capture them one time and having them available in the repository is a huge time saver. So Gloria, looks like the poll disappeared before we got any answer. There we go. All right, so it looks like 63% of you, where'd it go? I lost it again, Gloria. There it is. So yes, 63% are using a document repository, 37 are not. Very good. Okay, I think what I'd like to do now before we move on to Brian and his part of the show here today is open it up for some quick questions. So let me see here. So what are the computer go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
That's what I was gonna go. I was muted, sorry. The questions that we have coming in, first one is, what are the computer hardware requirements for using this product? What would improve the OCR performance while this is running? RAM intensive, CPU intensive?
I tell you what, we'll send you the requirements. If you just, we will throw our contact information up at the end of the hour here, and I'll send you those requirements.
Okay. Next one is, how do expense invoices determine the GL account or accounts that the invoice should be posted to?
Well, it depends on the ERP you're working with. With some, they can default from the from the vendor setup. Others, you do need to include that in the data that you push. So it just depends on which particular ERP you're working with.
Okay. And we have another question. Is this limited to the cloud only, or,
I'm sorry,
or can it also work on-prem?
Either or, yes. It can work on-prem and in the cloud.
And then I think SX.e was the response on
SX.e.
the previous
question.
question.
You can have GL accounts default from the vendor setup, or you can enter it once it's in the AP batch. You can enter it there.
Okay. Next question is wondering about UnForm's form processing. Is it easy to connect CSD to on-prem UnForms? How transferable are the legacy 61090 RUC files? I think RUC files is what we were looking for there.
So the answer is it is relatively easy to connect it, yes. What you need to, with CSD, The output is now, excuse me, you have the ability now they've got XML output. So it does, you'll want to switch to the new XML rule files. And there's a lot of advantages to it. You know, a lot of folks had to have various modifications done to their print output to get data into the data stream that didn't come in with the standard print output. Well, the XML data output, they've done a great job of including just about every piece of the transaction in there. So I would strongly encourage you to use the new XML rule file rather than the old ones.
And we have, there was clarification. Yes, rule files is what we were asking about on that.
Yes.
But another question came in. Can we also process customer purchase orders to extract information and enter new orders into the ERP?
Well, that is a perfect transition. So what we're going to do now, we're very fortunate to have Brian Jones with us from NSA today, and he is going to actually step us through an example of that very thing right now. So Brian, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Paul. We have gotten that exact same question actually many times. Usually what we find is customers start out on the AP side, and then they ask the question, well, why is it limited to that? And it's really not. So what I'm going to run through here is an example on the sales side. Paul did the kind of the invoicing AP side. I'm going to do an example on the sales side. So I have a purchase order coming in from a customer. It can come in via email, via fax. It can be scanned. And
Brian, we lost your screen,
Lost me?
Brian. We lost your
that?
screen. There we
How about
go.
that? There we go.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So back to what I was saying. A document can come in either via fax, via email. It can be mailed and scanned into the system. In my example here, what I've got is I've got a purchase order from one of my customers. It's got two simple line items on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that file, I'm going to drop it into my inbound folder in UnForm. And what Paul showed is that goes into the image manager. The image manager takes that file and reads it and then processes it. So if I go select, this was the one I just pulled in. If I select the file, I can see the fields that I have pulled off of that PDF, and I can actually go down to the line level and see what the lines look like. I have the ability also to reach back into the system, back into SX.enterprise or CSD. It doesn't matter, and I can validate data on this as well. So I can make sure, again, even before it goes into the system, this is a valid customer, these are valid parts, whatever I want to do. So once I've got the system into Image Manager, I have a job set up then that allows me to take that, and I'm going to assign that, and I'm going to send that through. It sends it through, and it creates the necessary EDI file that can then be pulled into SX. Now, again, in my example here, I'm stopping like Paul did. I'm going through the steps. In reality, if everything matches and everything fits, you don't even have to go into Image Manager to do things. The data will just automatically flow into the system. So once I have submitted that, I go into SX or CSD. I am using EDEPP to pull this data in. So I've got a stored job here. I'm going to do a one-time copy of that. I'm going to send it to view so we can see what the output looks like. I'm going to pull it right into the system. Again, this could be a scheduled job running automatically in SX or CSD. So again, I don't have to do anything with it. Give it a next, give it a save. And if I go out to my reports, what's going to happen is that the act of running EDEPP and I did an update, it's going to create 2 reports. One of them is going to, and I'll show it to you, one of them is going to validate the EDI file. And if there are any error messages or warnings, in this case, the price is different from the price in the system. And again, you can control that set up on the customer record and tolerances and things like that. So shows me any messages. And then the final update, if I go to the batch update file here, it actually tells me what happened. So in this case, it pulled in my 2 line items. One of them's on back order. One of them's got a price discrepancy there, and it actually created this order. So if I go out here into order entry, and I go look for that order there, do a search. Yeah, let's get that out of the way. Created my order, Phillies Plumbing. It came in via, in this case, again, I'm using the EDI logic in the system to do this. Again, this could be flat files, or if you're running CSD, as Paul mentioned, it's the XML files that pull it into the system. And if I go into the detail, I am going to see the 2 lines I created. And again, depending on how I've got the system set up, the costs and the prices and things like that come from the purchase order, or they come from the system. So one more piece of that, as we pull it into the system, it also sends the data to the archive. So again, I have a history of everything that's coming into the system. So if I go to a refresh here, actually go to a look from demo sales, go to a search. No, isn't it there? It is. Go to a search, go find my Phillies Plumbing. And that was not today's. Go to Phillies Plumbing. I have, I can see actually the raw data file, and I can see the PDF of the file too. So if I want to go look at exactly what happened, and if I want to send this off to somebody or do something with it, I've got it there. So again, simple example of a purchase order coming into the system. Again, we're using the EDI logic. If you've got customers that that do a large amount of transactions, maybe you do EDI with them, but what about everybody else? It's fairly simple to set up jobs in here and make this flow. So with that said, Gloria, why don't you bring up that 3rd and final polling question? Are you interested in a better way to manage compliance with your business processes? Simply a yes or no. And again, certainly a solution like UnForm can help you track and keep these documents in an archive and make it easier for data to be entered. Let's see our answers here. Another minute or so. And the results are yes. As I would expect, most companies are or would be interested to better compliance.
Yeah.
With that said, why don't I turn it back to you, Paul, if you want to take control.
Okay.
And we also had a question come in. Maybe this would be a good time to pop it in.
Yeah,
can SX.e 5.1 pull in EDI files for order entry?
It can if you have the batch APIs.
Okay.
So you need you need to be licensed for the batch APIs.
Okay. And then we have one other question so far, and it's what other types of transactions does this work with?
Oh, well, obviously AP vendor invoices have been a one of the hot topics because that's a very data entry intensive process. And I will share with you, we do have a customer that has implemented AP invoice entry piece, and they focused on their top 5 by volume vendors. And at this point, they're actually getting 85% of those transactions going into their system without any human intervention. So, you know, those are the kinds of things you want to look at. You want to target those high volume, routine transaction type vendors and get that process automated so that you're not wasting time, you know, just keying stuff in that should just be able to flow through. Any other questions, Christy?
Yeah, we just had one more pop in. How much functionality of UnForm 10 is lost with Fax ERP?
I'm not sure I understand. So you don't lose any functionality. As a matter of fact, the example I was just citing of the folks doing the AP import, they're actually a very large fax user that are doing it. So, I mean, it's all the same. You know, it's applicable whether it's, you know, Fax or Cloud Suite or SX.e or A+ or you know, any other application.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Oh,
so it looks
okay.
like that's all the questions that have popped in so far. So I think, Paul, you were going to go through some of the contact info.
Yeah, well, first, we thank you guys for taking the time and letting us, you know, show you this stuff. If you have, you know, some time, I strongly encourage you to go to our site. All the documentation's there, videos are there. You can also download an evaluation copy if you need to, if you feel like, you know, trying some of the stuff out. Actually, Christy, I think we just updated a bunch of training videos on the site as well. So
absolutely, we just posted those today.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of training videos up there as well. If you have any questions for me, that my contact info is there. And Brian, I really do appreciate you taking the time today to help us with this demo. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. And Gloria, I think that's it. Yeah.
As always, everyone from UnForm, it is not only a pleasure, but it's always informative. So thank you so much, Paul, Brian, and Christy. Christy, you did a great job and a bang-up job on the Q&A, and wanted to alert everyone that is online that next Tuesday, UpCube will be joining us and be going over a survey of their interaction with First Supply and their UpCube pricing optimization software. So watch your inbox and also watch the forums. TUG members, just a quick reminder, if you still have any questions, please post them to the All Members Forum board. I know that they're watched carefully by the people that are joining us as presenters today. And also we want to thank every one of you for not only engaging today, but everything that you do to make TUG the meaningful peer-to-peer organization that it is. So for those of you who are not members yet, I have to say why. Jump on over to www.theuser.org and join us today. And as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap.